everybody. Happy Monday. I think it's a Monday, isn't it?
Yeah. Monday.
Well, if you've not been here before, my name is Elizabeth, and I am your friendly hillbilly host, and this is Hillbilly Crime. My mother also joins us, Miss Sweet Tater. She's here, and we've already got lots of people in the comments today. Let's see who all's here. Everybody, come on in, come on in. Roger Croucher, who is to hold them accountable? I know some that needs it. Yep, the title for this is Policing the Police. We're going to look at a couple cases tonight. One of the cases that many of us might be aware of is the Sandra Birchmore case up in Massachusetts. It's had quite a bit of media around it. But there's another case. Miss Jana has brought it to our attention on our channel. And it's Justice for Crystal McCrory Jones. And we're going to look at her case because I thought that there just seemed, it sounds like there's a lot of similarities in how the investigation was handled with that. So I wanted to pull this up. This was one of the articles that she sent me. So we're going to read this together. Let's see. Oh, let me get back over here. Okay. Family private investigator continue to raise concerns nearly 2 years after West Carroll woman's death ruled self-inflicted. They hit last night's video on my monetization, so I'll probably have to go back in that video and take some stuff out. So I'm just going to be really careful tonight and make sure they don't hit this one. All right. Family, lawyers, and private investigator Sheila Wasaki continue to question the West Carroll Parish Sheriff's Office's investigation into Crystal Jones's death nearly 2 years after it was ruled self-inflicted. Crystal Jones scheduled a doctor's appointment for the morning of February 9th, 2023. However, she never made it. According to investigation files, Crystal's husband, Tony, contacted East Carroll Medical Clinic after multiple attempts to call and text her with no answer. Tony said the clinic told him Crystal never checked in for her appointment. Tony said he tried to call Crystal a few more times, but became worried when she still wasn't responding. So he called the West Carroll Parish Sheriff's Office Deputy Chuck Harris to do a welfare check. Look how beautiful. Okay. According to Deputy Harris's report, Crystal's vehicle was still at the house when he arrived. Deputy Harris said he called Tony to tell him no one answered the door. In an interview with WCPSO Chief Deputy Alan Irby, Tony said he was on the phone the entire time with Harris. Both Harris's report and the interview between Tony and Irby show Tony told Harris the door was unlocked and asked him to go inside. Harris said Tony gave him directions to the bedroom, which is where Crystal was found unalived. This was at around 4:40 p.m. on the same day Crystal's appointment was supposed to be. Crime scene photos show that Crystal was found with a pillow over her face and through the pillow, a pew-pew through the pillow. According to investigators, the pew-pew was still in her hand but did not chamber the next round. This condition is usually caused by a limp wrist situation where the person fires the weapon with one hand and the weapon is not stable enough to eject the spent casing and chamber the next round, stated Irby's report. The report detailed that investigators could not find the spent casing. Irby interviewed Tony a few hours after Crystal was found. Taking a statement from Tony in reference to a self-inflicted wound of his wife, Mrs. Crystal McCrory Jones, Irby said at the beginning of the interview, Crystal's sister, Jana, said she believes the sheriff's office prematurely declared the death self-inflicted. It took them 7 minutes to interview him, and in that 7-minute interview, they mentioned that it was a self-inflicted wound, Jana said. Letters sent to the Louisiana State Police from Jana's lawyers claim the investigative reports were full of errors and discrepancies. The lawyer's letter highlighted photographs taken of Crystal's body at the crime scene and the funeral home showing what appears to be bruising around Crystal's hands and her inner thighs. The photographs indicate the likelihood of some fighting or struggle before her death, as bruising cannot occur post-mortem, only ante or peri-mortem, the lawyers wrote. The bruising was not mentioned in any of the investigative reports or the autopsy. KNOE reviewed emails sent to Jana. The forensic pathologist who performed the autopsy told Jana through email there was no bruising on her inner thighs or waist and attributed it to post-mortem lividity, which is the settling of blood after death. Jana said there was one glaring mistake that made her question the entire investigation, and that is how the investigative report said law enforcement never found the shell casing, but Tony found the casing a week later. In both a recorded conversation between Jana and West Carroll Parish Sheriff Scott Matthews, as well as Deputy Irby's report, Matthews and Irby said the casing is pictured in a crime scene photo. There is not a crime scene photo with that shell casing in there, Jana said. That's when I said there's something wrong, because he, Sheriff Matthews, said that the casing was plain as day in a crime scene photo that 5 sets of eyes missed, and it wasn't there. It's in no crime scene photos, Jana said. Jana said the errors kept piling up as the investigation continued. A review of the case file revealed the following details. The ballistics report misidentified the weapon. The case file said that it was a Ruger EC9. However, a check of the serial number shows it was an LC9, not a Ruger EC9. The coroner's report had multiple mistakes, such as Crystal's name being misspelled and incorrect birth and death dates. Further, the report showed Crystal had several health conditions, but Jana said her sister was never diagnosed with those. Sounds like those are some big discrepancies to me. The coroner's report had the time of death scratched out and changed. The coroner's report listed that she had pneumonia and seizures, Jana said. My sister never had any of those medical problems. KNOE's Sophia Ridley talked to a retired police chief with over 20 years of experience in police work. He said that when simple details are incorrect, it raises concerns. It sure does. Or at least it should. I don't want to criticize another law enforcement agency or someone in that business, but the truth is the truth. If you don't do a thorough job and don't get all the details right that are obvious, that would cause me to ask a lot of questions, said retired Chief Hank Sammons. It makes me ask about competency. That's a big thing. People need to be competent in the work that they do. And this kind of work is like, there's no room for mistakes and stuff like this. The case file claimed there was no canvassing of the area, no interview with neighbors, and there were less than 40 photos taken of the scene. In some photos, the family dog could be seen on the bed with the body. They would have handled things totally different if it was their loved one. I think they just messed things up from the very beginning, Jana said. Jana said she felt like the West Carroll Parish Sheriff's Department failed in their investigation, so she reached out to Sheila Wysocki. Wysocki is one of the leading cold case private investigators in the country. I believe that the steps that were taken in Jana's sister's case has caused concern in the community, as it should, and that takes away the credibility of the sheriff, Wysocki said. KNOE reached out to the WCPSD to ask for their policies and procedures to investigate homicides, self-inflicted, and pew-pew deaths, as well as securing and photographing crime scenes. The sheriff's office responded with just the case file and not with any of the material requested. So KNOE asked the sheriff's office if they were denying the request for policies and procedures. We did not deny your request. We simply did not have the information to provide to you, Matthews said in an emailed response. Sammons, the retired cop, said procedures and policies are necessary for an investigation. You've got to have policies and procedures and protocols for how you go about doing things, I guess is what they say. There are certain steps that are just certain steps. I don't care if it's Louisiana, Michigan, or wherever it is. There are certain steps you go through to develop a profile, Sammons said. Jana and Wysocki said they were turned away by LSP and the Louisiana State Attorney General's office, so they went to Washington, D.C. to ask for help from lawmakers. KNOE's Sophia Ridley reached out multiple times to Sheriff Matthews for an interview to see if he could explain some of the errors in the investigation. Matthews did agree at one point to talk. However, on the day of the scheduled interview, Matthews never answered and later told KNOE he was no longer interested in speaking. And I guess that's the end of that one. Okay. So, let me get up here to these comments. Cindy Rice. Hello from sunny South Florida. I'm so sorry, Miss Jana. I'm so sorry that you and your family are going through all that you've been through. Christy A. Painter's daughter. Hello, ladies. Hey, ladies. Good evening, everybody. Let me get down here. You got any comments on there, Mom, while I get these?
Well, she was obviously pew-pewed, and not the other. And I don't know why they would be so careless with the information, but they may or may not trying to be trickery, of trying to do anything. They were just incompetent.
Absolutely. Well, and this other case with Sandra Birchmore, that a lot of that has come out. So they first with Sandra. Okay. One of the things I wanted to do on tonight's live is talk about how this new Explorers program that a lot of the police departments appear to have. There was an investigation that went into these Explorer programs, and they kind of ended up comparing it to the Boy Scouts. You know how there was a whole lot of sexual abuse in the Boy Scouts. A lot of people may not have known that back years ago, but here,
I don't think it occurs anymore.
In the last 10 or 15 years, we've heard more about it than what you did 30 years ago. But so this girl was part of this Explorers program, and she was groomed by these police officers, and she was also found unalived, and they called it self-inflicted. Sorry, I'm trying to be careful what I say. And they the FBI ended up coming in a couple years later and saying, no, this was not self-induced. You know, she was red-rummed. So let me pull this up, and there's just so many similarities in the way that these two investigations, I think, have been conducted. So let's look at this other case real fast. Thank you, Miss Jana. Anything that you want to tell us, and you can come on anytime. We'll have you on if you want to. Her husband was a previous employee with the sheriff's department, and that's on this first case. So let me go over here and and she also has, let me share this. I found this too. She also, and I put the link in the here, let me stop sharing. I think it said it didn't catch it. I put the link in the description of tonight's video too. So if you want to go and help Miss Jana and sign her petition, it says try sharing your screen again, restart my browser. I don't know if it's showing you guys, but I put the link in the description, and it's a change.org petition for them to reopen the investigation into Crystal McCrory Jones's case. So if you guys want to go, I don't think it's showing. It's telling me it didn't show. But if
we see your face.
Oh, do you? Okay. It's telling me on my side that it didn't do it. All right. So let me redo this.
I don't have any food.
Okay.
Do you want in my lap? Oh, they're getting your spot in the bed, don't they? You want Mommy to put them out.
Okay, let's read this one together. So this is, pick her up. This is from the Marshall Project, and the Marshall Project is an independent nonprofit journalism group, and so they did this. It was August 30th, 2024. This was published, and it says how a Massachusetts cop allegedly groomed, controlled, and unalived Sandra Birchmore. Matthew Farwell met her in a police explorer program. Prosecutors say he abused her for years before she became pregnant, and he unalived her. And that's a picture of Sandra. And it says, warning, this story contains details of sexual abuse and self-inflicted unaliving. Matthew Farwell brought ginger ale. Sandra Birchmore, 23, texted a friend the news in late January 2021. Farwell, then a police officer in Stoughton, Massachusetts, near Boston, had visited Birchmore's apartment the night before, according to an affidavit accompanying Farwell's indictment and arrest for unaliving her. She thought Farwell bringing soda might be a sign that their relationship was improving. He's coming around, her friend texted. A lot more than I thought he was going to, yes, Birchmore wrote back. His behavior toward her that night had been markedly different. A complete 180 from where we were at, Birchmore texted another person, according to the affidavit filed in federal court this week. The court records allege in disturbing detail that Farwell had, for about a decade, groomed, controlled, and finally unalived Birchmore. The indictment of Farwell, 38, this week is a major twist in a case that has garnered national speculation into the circumstances of her death. The two met when Birchmore was a 13-year-old participant in the Stoughton Police Department's Explorers Post, a mentorship program created by Scouting America, formerly known as the Boy Scouts. That's an interesting tidbit, isn't it? That the people who formerly were known as the Boy Scouts also created this Explorer program. That's the same people. That teaches young people about law enforcement. Farwell was an instructor and was later hired as a police officer. And I bet you that just about every county has these programs, because we've seen many pictures of our very own Letcher County Sheriff's Department with a lot of young kids in little uniforms. The Marshall Project featured Birchmore's case earlier this year as a part of an investigation that found nearly 200 allegations of abuse and misconduct in police explorer programs across the country. Before his indictment, Farwell had acknowledged to investigators that he visited Birchmore's apartment on the night of her death and that he had an argument. But he said she was alive when he left, according to police records. The lawyer representing Farwell in a civil lawsuit filed by Birchmore's family didn't respond to requests for comment. Farwell had sex with Birchmore when she was 15 years old and couldn't legally consent, according to the federal indictment. Farwell had previously told investigators that he first had sex with Birchmore 7 years later in 2020, but the indictment alleges that was a lie. Investigators cite text messages showing the sexual relationship continued for years. Prosecutors contend that Farwell tracked Birchmore's phone location, punished her with violent sex acts for perceived misbehavior, and became angry when someone informed the police department of their relationship, according to the affidavit. In January 2021, Birchmore was newly pregnant and believed Farwell was the father, since he had agreed to impregnate her as part of a deal they made, court records allege, for Birchmore to stay quiet about their relationship. And that makes absolutely zero sense. Okay, I'm gonna get you pregnant so you'll be quiet and not tell anybody. Yeah, that's really going to keep them quiet. When Birchmore told Farwell about the pregnancy, he became angry, according to court records. She told a friend that Farwell allegedly said he wished she would just die and he wants nothing to do with the baby, according to the affidavit. But yet he got her pregnant on purpose. That's the kind of logic that you want one of our police officers to have, right? But then the married father brought her the ginger ale she had asked for that night in January. He was coming around to the idea of being a dad to the child they'd have together. Birchmore texted her friend. He also asked for a key to her apartment after never wanting one before, according to court records. Farwell did something else strange that night. Birchmore texted her friend. He opened her closet door and looked in her bedroom, or in her bathroom, and she didn't know why. That's weird, her friend texted. Yeah, it was really weird, she responded. 12 days later, Birchmore was found dead in her apartment, hanging from the door handle of her bedroom closet, the same one he was inspecting the day before. The medical examiner ruled her death self-induced. But in a federal indictment released earlier this week, prosecutors allege the night Farwell brought Birchmore ginger ale, he was actually planning to unalive her and was scoping her apartment for ways to stage her death as self-induced. We allege that Sandra Birchmore survived years of grooming, statutory R-word, and then sexual violence, all at the hands of Matthew Farwell, said Joshua Levy, the acting U.S. attorney for the District of Massachusetts, at a press conference on Wednesday, adding that when Farwell could no longer control Birchmore, he silenced her permanently. In court records newly released as part of the criminal case, which includes detailed text messages between Farwell and Birchmore, prosecutors paint Farwell as a controlling predator who was fixated on playing out violent R-word fantasies with Birchmore ever since she was a young teenager in the Explorer program. And those text messages were absolutely awful. They were very immature, and they were very sexually focused, and in a very immature way too, I might add. In one text exchange months before her death, court records allege the sexual relationship they had. Birchmore texted Farwell, "Do you want me to just take what you do or try and say no?" She's asking what kind of theater he's wanting her, what kind of play does he want her to do? "I know being told no is your favorite," to which he responds, "Say no." So they're talking about R-word fantasies and her playing that out for him, and her so young. It just turns my stomach. He was also controlling, authorities allege, tracking her phone location and questioning her when she turned it off. So he didn't really want nothing to do with her, but yet he wanted everything to do with her. The investigation by the Marshall Project, published earlier this year, detailed the history of sexual abuse and misconduct allegations within law enforcement Explorer programs. We found that officers did not always face criminal prosecutions for their actions, and among those who did, about half were sentenced to time behind bars, ranging from weekends in jail to years in prison. Of course, they all get special treatment. That thin blue line, baby. It'll cover up a whole lot of bad. Birchmore is also not the only victim of alleged grooming and abuse due to her participation in Explorers. Our reporting found her case is among nearly 200 allegations that law enforcement personnel, mostly officers, have groomed, sexually abused, or engaged in inappropriate behavior with participants since the 1970s. The majority of the victims are teenage girls. Since the publication of our story this spring, More survivors alleging abuse and misconduct by police officers in law enforcement explorers programs have contacted us. And that's usually how it happens. Once one person comes forward, then the others think that it's safe enough to come forward. But then you've also got some that won't come forward because of the shame and the guilt and whatever other reasons they have. Intimidation, fear. I think the potential harm, and the actual harm through these programs outweighs the benefits, said Phil Stinson, a criminal justice professor at Bowling Green State University, who has documented police sexual violence, including in Explorer programs. We've got to figure out other ways to have programs where adolescents can explore different career paths and exposure to career opportunities. But this is something we've seen before, and I dare to say we'll see again, he said. Stinson called the Birchmore case utterly horrific and shocking. Birchmore joined the Staunton Police Department's Explorer program as a young teenager, hoping to find a sense of direction in law enforcement. Both her mother and grandmother died when she was a teenager. In a lawsuit filed by her family following Birchmore's death, lawyers for the family described Birchmore as having deeply respected and admired police officers. Barbara Wright, Birchmore's cousin, told the Marshall Project on Wednesday that news of Farwell's arrest is a long time coming. I've been praying for it since the day I found out what happened to Sandra, because I knew that it was not self-inflicted, she said. Wright says the affidavit shows how sick Farwell is and urges parents to be more cautious of programs like Explorers. Anyone who's even considering putting their child in one of these programs, I hope they make sure that they investigate it. Make sure that the program is being recertified each and every year and training is being taken, and that kids aren't going out alone with police officers, Wright said. There's a lot of things parents can do to make sure their kids are safe when they're in these programs, and not just assume that they're going to be safe, but make sure to check out every detail. Documents provided by the Staunton Police Department through a public records request show a program run with little oversight. Most of them don't have any oversight. Despite operating the program for about 15 years, the police department provided only a single one-year agreement with Learning for Life, a Scouting America affiliate that oversees the National Explorer program. The department could not locate any youth safety training, as encouraged by Scouting, that Farwell or other officers completed as instructors. Earlier this year, Scouting America did not respond to our questions about its oversight of the Staunton Explorer program or questions about how it provides safeguards for youth in explorers more broadly. And let me take a break here real fast and go back over here. And let me look at some of these. You got anything? What do you think about that, Mom?
Well, I just don't know how those things happen. I don't hear too much gossip about the band, I don't think. I mean, you hear a little bit. But any of those programs, well, you don't hear any, there's not too much sexual stuff in the sports. There might be some. But that's just really awful that the police that you think that are supposed to be protecting you and yada, 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 and a city government, they should have been monitoring those programs.
Well, I've told you, me and you have talked about it several times privately about nonprofit groups and how the nonprofit organizations really don't have much oversight at all, especially only really whoever the funding, the grant the person who's actually giving them the grant, then they are it's their responsibility, I guess, to make sure that their money is being used properly.
Do we know how that was organized?
No, we don't.
It could have been through the city or through.
Well, it looks like it's the Explorers program looks like it's a national law enforcement. It's a national program like the Boy Scouts. How was the Boy Scouts? I guess that was a nonprofit, wasn't it? Was Boy Scouts?
Well, you never knew if you were a Boy Scout leader because they had corporate headquarters. See, that's where when they have corporate headquarters, it gets so it gets kind of, what they do with the money, nobody knows, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Well, but that's my point. You don't have any organization, or you don't have any authority. You don't have any certain specific authority whose job it is to go and look through an organization's records and make sure that all their stuff is right. Unless maybe it'd be the IRS. Would it be the IRS to do something like? I don't think it is, because they're tax exempt.
Well,
I don't know.
But that's the theft part of it. You know what I'm saying? But the other part of it is the local people are the ones that are actually delivering the program to the people in the city. They're the ones that are working with the kids.
Right. All right, let me go back over here. And
that's right. Those are their friends and neighbors' kids. It doesn't have anything to do with the corporation. I was just trying to figure out how the thing was structured, and I figured it out. You got that corporate level, and then the school works under their umbrella.
Yeah, well,
but nobody's checking up on anything.
Right. Despite the only time anybody sees any of that kind of stuff is if a problem happens, and then people go digging into it, but you don't have any oversight. Like somebody.
Well, they usually won't let people that have some sort of a felony on their record work in schools. Most usually that's the case.
Yeah, but this isn't a school program. This is a law.
No, it isn't. But where are they going to get their kids from? Or are they going to show up down to the police department? I just figured they went to the schools.
Well, now that's a good, I don't know. Let's read it and see if it'll tell us.
Okay.
And if it doesn't, I'll look it up. Despite a detailed internal affairs investigation, state police investigation, and records revealed as a result of an ongoing lawsuit filed by Birchmore's family. See, I think that's what made a lot of this happen too, was the civil lawsuit. Her family filed a civil lawsuit, and that civil lawsuit must have been kind of the same way that the civil lawsuit was filed in Deputy Field's case here with Mickey. Nothing got looked into until that civil lawsuit was filed. And I bet this was kind of the same deal. Despite a detailed internal affairs investigation, state police investigation, and records revealed as a result of an ongoing lawsuit filed by Birchmore's family, Farwell resigned from the Staunton Police Department. He resigned. He didn't even get fired, and did not face criminal charges for years. He was decertified in March. And he's not the only one that got caught in this, as we will find out. Him, his twin brother, who was also a police officer, and their boss, one of their higher ups, also was having relations with this same girl. unbelievable. And if you guys think that she's the only one that this was happening to, I beg to differ. If the truth was known, we'll never know how many children were done this way. And it was all covered up. Text messages cited in court documents showing a troubling relationship that began when Farwell met Birchmore when she was a 13-year-old in their Towns Explorer program. He then offered to tutor her, records show, where their conversations became sexual and included discussions about Farwell being Birchmore's first sexual partner. That's the second time I've heard. They liked his brother, or one of them said they were interested in one of her little friends because she was a V. You know, she'd never been with anybody before. This is sick, y'all. These were grown men that were masquerading as police officers.
Well, go ahead and read it.
Okay. In a June 2020 text exchange about a sexual experience that occurred when she was 15 years old and Farwell was 27, Birchmore texted the married father, "I was kind of scared to say no in the beginning, not knowing how you'd take it." In another message, Farwell told Birchmore he would have had schmecks with her when she was even younger. The affidavit also alleges that he would engage in forceful, oral, vaginal, and in the rear, smex acts as a way to punish her for bad grades or having smex with other people. Authorities also say Farwell allegedly left work more than 24 times during his police shifts to meet and at times have schmecks with Birchmore. In the last few years of Birchmore's life, Farwell became cautious about putting details of the relationship in writing, often telling the young woman to delete text messages or to wait until they were in person to discuss something. As Birchmore became more excited about becoming a mother, Farwell grew more upset. In a text exchange in December of 2020, Birchmore demanded Farwell be present during labor, likely sometime in late summer, and that he sign the birth certificate. He responded, "You are truly the worst person on the face of the earth," according to the affidavit, even though he agreed to get her pregnant. Prosecutors allege that Farwell used his experience as a detective to devise a plan to unalive Birchmore during a snowstorm when it could take days for someone to check on her. He obviously was not a very good detective. Following the discovery of her body, Farwell allegedly searched and then deleted questions about iPhone message recovery. A colleague told authorities that Farwell showed no sadness or grief over Birchmore's death and that he was angry about the state police investigation into his relationship with her. How dare they investigate me? Matthew Farwell was not the only officer involved with Birchmore, according to a police investigative report. His twin brother, William, was also an Explorer program instructor and Staunton police officer. The program was run by veteran officer Robert Devine, who brought the Farwells on as mentors. All three of them, honey. The police investigation found that Devine and William Farwell also had sexual relationships with Birchmore when she was an adult. Both William Farwell and Devine have denied any wrongdoing. At a press conference on Wednesday, Levy, the acting U.S. attorney, stressed that the FBI's investigation is ongoing. And let's see, it says here a correction. This story has been updated to correct the number of days between the time that prosecutors allege Matthew Farwell scoped Sandra Birchmore's apartment and when her body was discovered. It was 12 days later, not 8. So that was their correction. Okay, now we're going to listen to this.
Mark, what do you make of this case?
You know, this, in a bizarre and unfortunate way, does not surprise me. You may remember, Elizabeth, because you were covering it, in the Karen Reed case, the AJ, Alan Jackson, who was defending Karen Reed, had a wealth of federal material. In fact, 2 of their witnesses they called in the defense case were related to the Department of Justice. And it always struck me as very peculiar. Why were the feds so intimately involved in the Karen Reed case? This explains everything. If I could connect some purely speculative dots here, it's apparent to me that the feds believed in the Karen Reed case, based on the testimony in the defense case, that the police had set that up, had basically framed her. You now have another case out of that same jurisdiction where they have now formally indicted a police officer, ex-police officer, or soon-to-be ex-police officer, for a homicide in connection and basically setting it up to look like a suicide. It is not far-fetched in the least to believe that the next proverbial shoe to drop is the feds then saying we're also going to file in the Karen Reed case, because I think that they've now got obviously wiretaps. They've obviously got somebody who is cooperating, and they're going to probably take over that police department at some time very soon.
So just so our audience is clear, in both of these cases, the FBI conducted an investigation. In the Farwell case, we know with the woman, the young woman who was pregnant, we know in that case it resulted in charges. In the Karen Reed case, the feds have never revealed what they found in their investigation. Why not?
Well, they have. This is why I say it was interesting. All of that defense case, a lot of what Alan Jackson was doing during the state prosecutor's case in chief was he had access, because under Brady they had to turn it over, meaning the Supreme Court case that says if you have something exculpatory, you must turn it over. He had access to all kinds of Department of Justice material. That led me to believe the Department of Justice was more than just casually involved here. And if they were letting that case go to trial, they wanted to see how it unfolded. They saw how it unfolded. It was astonishing to me, 3,000 miles away, just watching it as a casual observer. This, however, really explains what is going on. I think the Department of Justice knows exactly what's happening here, and they've done an investigation such that they feel confident enough to bring charges.
And remember, in the Karen Reed case, we had text messages of the police officers investigating the murder of Officer O'Keefe that were, sexist and misogynistic and disgusting toward Karen Reed. We also had a weird Google search. Karen Reed has always maintained that she was driving drunk that night and that she left O'Keefe, dropped him off at another officer's home. And somebody in that officer's home was Googling how long before somebody dies when left out in the cold. And that's, in fact, how Officer O'Keefe died, in the snowbank outside the home.
And by the way, I would point this out for people who always rush to kind of accept the prosecutorial narrative. That case, the defense was mocked in a lot of quarters, not only by the judge who was presiding in the state court, but, people who were observing and watching. The fact is that if you looked at that case, it's astonishing also to me that jurors hung in that case because it was apparent that this thing was staged in Karen Reed. And now we've got the imprint, if you will, of the feds saying, hey, wait a second here. This case, which was supposedly a suicide, in spite of the fact that this young lady was looking forward to the birth of the child, was not in fact a suicide, and in fact had been manipulated, and the crime scene had been manipulated. Sound familiar? It rings and resonates from what happened in Karen Reed. It's almost like they've got a playbook over there.
Mark, thanks so much for watching.
Okay. And then we're going to look at this this one right here. So this one is another piece of the puzzle with Sandra Birchmore. Now, I'm kind of jumping from one to the other. I probably ought to slow down. So you look at the way that these investigations were done. Like these investigations that we're talking about right here, Karen Reed and Sandra Birchmore, those are both in Massachusetts, and the state police were actually the ones that were investigating both of those cases. And it was also the same lead prosecutor in those cases. And okay, the town of Abington, let's see, let me get back up here. All right, 25 investigates. Abington recommends decertification for former cop linked to Sandra Birchmore. Let me see where the video is. I guess I can just push this one. Let's see. Figure out
what relationship with Sandra Birchmore. A different cop is charged with her murder. 25 Investigates has learned Heel's status as a certified police officer is under review. 25 Investigates has been looking at Josh Heel's record when he was an Abington school resource officer. The Massachusetts Post Commission has been looking too. We've learned that Post asked Abington police to turn over records on Heel last month. That request came around the same time as our reporting on Heel's connection to Sandra Birchmore.
From what I understand, he was sexting all day while he's at work.
Our reporting focused on a recording that revealed what then Abington Police Chief David Del Papa learned about Heel and Birchmore beginning in late 2021. According to Del Papa, Stoughton's then deputy police chief found Heel had a credibility problem and told Del Papa Heel shouldn't be around children. Heel knew Birchmore from his previous job with Stoughton's animal control.
He found Josh to be not credible because Josh denied having a sexual relationship with Birchmore during the first interview, but had changed his answer in the second interview.
Police departments are required to report credible allegations to the Post Commission. It's the state agency that certifies police officers and tracks their conduct. That never happened with Heel. Now, more than 2 years later, 25 Investigates has learned Post is collecting information on Heel and could seek to strip his state certification. Decertification would prevent Heel from ever being a cop again. Abington's town manager tells me the town has provided Post with the documents requested. A Post spokesperson tells me she cannot comment on cases that may be pending. Heel's lawyer did not immediately respond to our email. For 25 Investigates, I'm Ted Daniel.
Okay. I think there's like 2 or 3 of these, but. All right. So that Heel guy is a completely different dude. He was a school resource officer and an animal control guy. And he also was having sexual relations with Sandra Birchmore, and she told him all about the other officers. So they've used him as a witness now. They've not charged any of these other officers with any criminal charges whatsoever. Only the one Farwell brother who is charged with her unaliving. And it took the FBI to come in and look at that long after it was called self-inflicted. And they had all the red flags. They had all of the evidence at their disposal, and they still continued to back up their buddy, and he got away with it for years. What do you think, Mother?
Well, I think it's real sad. I really do. And I guess the girl, you know, she never did tell it to anybody.
Yes,
or maybe she could have, and people
She
not paying
did.
any attention.
she told many people about their relationship. The biggest
I don't
thing,
know how people. I just don't know how people can accept that.
well, the biggest thing here is that nobody listened. Who is supposed to be listening to the, someone called the police department there at the Staunton Police Department and reported the relationship between the Farwell guy and the little girl. And he got very, very angry. But where were the higher ups? Now, you've got them coming out now, saying that they should never be around any, that this should never have happened, and that they're so sad that it's all, just so upsetting. Well, where were they before? Where did any of this, when did it,
It's
why?
just amazing what we are willing to tolerate in society. I don't know, maybe it always happened before, but those kinds of things where grown adult folks are taking advantage of young people. I mean, they don't know what they're even going to do tomorrow, and you take something from them that can't be given back.
These are, a lot of times in life, we just can't even, we can't understand what anybody else is going through unless it affects us. We can hear about all of the little starving children in Africa, but until you or your child actually goes hungry and knows what it's like to starve, I don't think we'll understand what they're going through. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of with anything in life. Unless it affects us, unless we walk through somebody else's shoes in a similar situation, we honestly don't know what somebody else is going through. So when you hear about somebody else's, sad story in another town, people don't have any compassion, or at least they can't empathize.
Well, even if you do empathize, what are you going to do about it?
Well,
how are you going to show that you have empathy? Well, the only way you can show that you have empathy, is in your everyday things. If you show empathy to people that you walk down the street beside of, you know what I'm saying? It starts right in your face.
Jilly Bean said Proctor was not the lead, so Proctor must not have been the lead on the other one. I thought they said he was the lead on both of those cases, Sandra Birchmore's case and Karen Reed's. But I could be wrong. Absolutely, probably am. Let's see. Tim says, I know personally 3 retired state police and an ATF, but they've never done anything for me. There's anytime you have humans doing anything, then there's going to be room for human error.
So then now we need robots. Well, at least they would analyze something in a logical format.
True, absolutely. Machines don't lie. People do.
Well, they could be out or break down, or somebody could get in there and mess with their software or something.
Well, what I was saying the other night about egos, if you offend or insult anyone, like with the Karen Reed case. Okay, so they were out drinking, her and her boyfriend or fiance or whatever they were. They're out drinking at the bar. They see a bunch of other people at the bar. He is a police officer. She is a college professor. But they're both, you know, in their 30s. They're young, good-looking people. And so they end up drinking too much. He wants to go to a party at a buddy's house, so she drives him, and it's like at the beginning of a blizzard. She drops him off and leaves. Well, then at like 6 o'clock the next morning, she ends up finding him in the exact same place that she dropped him off at, and he was laying in the snow, unalived. Well, they ended up charging her with it, saying that she had, whenever she dropped him off, she's ran into him with the car or backed into him, and then she left him there to die. Well, a lot of people think that the police, because that was a police officer's house that they dropped him off at, and there was a whole bunch of people there, and it ended up being, well, it ends up looking like he was unalived there, and they set her up to take the fall. And so they had the first trial, and it was hung. So now they're getting ready to try her again. But through that trial came out a wealth of corruption, and the lead investigator ended up being, after he got up and testified and made an absolute mess of himself in that case, they ended up putting him on like leave after that, after he testified. But it was what ended up helping the defense in that case was that the FBI had looked into that apparently previously. So because the FBI had looked into that case so much, her defense attorney had all of that Brady material, which is anything that's exculpatory evidence, they have to turn over to the defense. So she had a real high-priced, good lawyer, and they ended up having access to all of that evidence. So they're getting ready to try her again. But you see how the police, like, they got the text messages from that lead detective, and he talked about her like a dog. He called her all kinds of names. Like, I don't know how anybody looks at the evidence that was presented in that trial and you see anything but a setup. And I think we're just starting to, I think before people thought about conspiracy theories and stuff like that as, Looney Tunes craziness. But now a lot of these things are starting to be true. Who would have ever dreamed that, look at all of these cases.
I always was kind of a conspiracy kind of a person. I always saw conspiracy. I thought them Russians came over here and planted all them old ticks. They're giving us tick diseases.
Jilly said the lead detectives were not the same in Sandra and Karen. Okay. Have these agencies never heard of Brady Giglio Act? Let's see. I guarantee something changes soon because this country will not last if it doesn't. Crystal C. There's a husband and wife on YouTube that were officers, and he welcomes cases to look at. It's a crime channel, and he talks about many cases he had done. Can't remember the name. Yep. Share, for Jana, share Crystal's story. That's the only way these things get out, is if we share and help each other and talk and educate.
These people that keep pushing this, I forget who their names were. They're the heroes. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're the ones that are. I don't know if they do it for the money or not, but that's how that stuff comes out. They have to just push it.
Yep. You just got to share it and talk about it. When I was listening,
try to do better, try to make sure our town's doing better.
When I was reading Crystal's story there, it sounded as soon as you read it, as soon as you get like halfway through it, it's like that husband sure did know a lot. Like he was directing. It's kind of like he was directing them to find, or like, I don't know. There was a lot of suspicious circumstances in there for me. And I don't see how it was. Well, we know how that works, how that happens. It said it right in the article. 7 minutes after the investigation was started, they had already made up their mind. And human error. That's human beings for you.
But it's not really in true error. It's
incompetence.
It's incompetency. I mean, you can make an error, you know what I'm saying, and it probably wouldn't totally make a case go the wrong way.
Well,
law enforcement, incompetent, you do.
Law enforcement is like the only career that I know of that is not open to any criticism. Every job that I've ever had, like you were expected to do certain things, meet certain milestones. You know, you have like depending on what your job is, but you know, you have an evaluation on your conduct. You know, there's an evaluation of how well you do your job. And if you're not doing a certain part of it right, you know, then your boss will let you know. I mean, law enforcement is the only one that I've ever seen that if you criticize or question or imply in the slightest way that they've done something wrong or that they didn't do something properly or appropriately. I think we lost Zelma there for a minute. She'll be back. But it's the only one that I know of that they get upset and they'll come get you. Revenge for hire, honey. Revenge for hire. Okay, let's see. Allegedly, Lisa, a lot of people just don't want to get involved unless it's happening to them and their family. Exactly. Yep. But if it was their granddaughter who social services was, you know, harassing or anything like that, they're not going to get involved unless it's happening to them. And then how dare anybody step on their toes? Let's see. When feds charged and arrested Farwell, Levy invited the state to also charge. I wonder if they did. Doubt it. I don't think that there's two. I don't think that there's state and federal on him yet. He had a court case, or I mean a hearing not too awful long ago, and they the defense had won a motion and the prosecution also won a motion. The defense said that they were going to come back later and ask for bond. but the prosecution, I wrote it down. They filed a motion for evidence to be protected from. Okay, so they asked for a lot of the discovery to be like sealed, for it to have like to be protected, to where Farwell could only see and go through it if he was with his attorneys and stuff. Like they wanted witnesses' names and stuff to be kept private, because they feared for any kind of witness tampering or people's names to get out. And you got to remember, all of these officers were in on this behavior together. Farwell was not the only one that was being investigated. All of these other officers were also being investigated, even though they have not been charged yet. And it seems like they've all been protected, which is very disturbing to me. Let's see. Farwell, think they won't. Oh, because they're worried about witnesses being intimidated, witnesses going missing. You know, they have to protect the integrity of their investigation and of this case, of this prosecution. There was an audio recording. We already listened to that with Joshua Hill. His boss was the Del Papa guy, and he kept his job all the way up until, I think, let's see, I wrote it down. Del Papa even stayed in being paid through May of 2025. And he was given a mutual separation between him and the town of Abingdon. And now this is one of the guys' bosses. And the town even provided him with a letter of recommendation to take with him for his next law enforcement position. Did they act fast enough? No, they did not. None of them did, in my opinion. I don't think any of them. Anytime there was a complaint or a piece of information that was given to anybody who could have done something, nothing was done. And you just see how this isn't the only case. There are so many cases where these investigations were half-assed done. And the investigators were clearly lacking common sense, logic, ethics. I know I say that word a whole lot, but it's like, does anybody even know what that means? Don Tackett, I'm still in shock from yesterday's live. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go in there and edit that and take out the part where it happened. YouTube got me. Demonetized our video from last night. So I'll have to go in and edit it. See if I can get it YouTube worthy. Oh, I worried about that when I was like, oh gosh, this is awful. Shame X2, like that song by Joe South, Walk a Mile in My Shoes. Let's see. Janine. Proctor admitted on the stand he decided Karen Reed was guilty and didn't look at anyone else within 16 hours of his death. Yep. And that's, sadly, he had blinders on. He was investigating according to his end goal. Yep. Yes. That's kind of what we've been talking about. He only had federal charges. That's what I thought. It was just one. And the way that works, federal, they can charge him federally, and they can also charge him through the state. And that's how a lot of times they'll end up getting people, like if they'll go ahead and let the state charge them with something, and they could go to trial. And if they got found not guilty or something like that, the feds could then come in and charge them federally, and it's not double jeopardy because it's two different courts. It's crazy, but the feds have like a 97% or 99.7%. I don't know what the number is, but it's really, really high. They have a really high conviction rate federally. So that means when the feds go in and investigate, they don't bring a case unless they've got it sewed up. I've never seen them bring a case that wasn't I's dotted, T's crossed all the way through. So anyway, my blood pressure goes up when I see 3 men getting paid to watch another man do a job like the water company. Women couldn't get away with that. No. But you tell somebody in law enforcement that you don't agree with their decision, or you don't agree with how they've done something, or question how they did something, and you'll see real fast you'll become public enemy number 1. Does anybody expect people that do not challenge the property tax forced upon themselves to stand up for other people's rights? Let's see. Willing to bet the majority have done something bad. I would agree with that. I tell my son all the time that I know we want to think most people are good and that most people will do the right thing. No, they won't. I had to learn the hard way. No, they won't. And no one to hold these investigators nor sheriffs accountable. And that once they have a relationship, like this situation that happened out here in front of my house with the dog, my one neighbor Pew and my other neighbor's dog. As soon as this happened, there was a great big fuss over the police officer that was called. He didn't do anything. And the one neighbor even said that he's the one who told him to pew it. Okay, so they were friends. And his conduct that day was being questioned and challenged. And it really caused a big problem. Well, anyway, as soon as this happened, he called the county attorney and he called the Commonwealth's attorney, allegedly, and immediately told them both what he wanted them to know. He didn't tell them what happened. He told them what he wanted them both to know. so that way the outcome would be what he wanted. So then when other people tried to tell the county attorney and the Commonwealth's attorney their side of what happened, they were already done biased. They had already spoken to that police officer. They had already heard what he told them. And so they weren't willing to do anything. Well, if that police officer is not giving an accurate account of what happened, how is anything supposed to move forward that way? How can the county attorney or the Commonwealth's attorney trust? They have to be able to trust what these police officers tell them. And if they're not an honest person, if they have a tendency to not tell the truth, and I'm applying that to anybody, any officer. How fair is your system going to be? How just is your system going to be? Because I don't think it's going to work out very well. Integrity was lost because of greed, lust, and favoritism. Yeah. Yep. My little neighbor's husband was on the city council when this happened, when this all happened out here in front of the house. He resigned from city council because I don't want to speak for them or anything, but I've purposefully not said a whole lot or covered that situation with the dog because I didn't want to hurt their chances of anything going forward. I didn't want to put anything out there that I shouldn't, or that would, hurt what they were trying to do. And it ended up nothing has happened. Nothing. There was a whole lot of saying, there was a whole lot of movement, but it wasn't anything that was moving forward. And he ended up resigning. I don't know if he resigned because he didn't want to be associated with any of that. I don't know. Well, I have to ask him specifically why. I know I did. I know she told me, but I don't want to say the wrong thing. But it's just been a really bad situation all the way around. How can a sheriff lie about evidence that's not there in a recorded conversation and then nothing happened to him? That's malfeasance. Because who's gonna look at it? There is nobody to do anything. If our prosecutors, our sheriffs, our chiefs of police, if these heads don't care to look at this stuff, who's going to? The FBI came in and actually charged Farwell. But the FBI also came in on the Karen Reed's case. But they didn't, even though they did all of the investigation and everything, you still haven't heard anything. The FBI has not come forward and said anything about a cover-up. They have not charged or accused anybody of the actual cover-up. What have we all been told, and we all know? The cover-up is worse than the crime, oftentimes. But all of these cover-ups aren't being charged. Ben Fields did not get charged with any of the cover-up that he had done. Scott Blair, the Commonwealth attorney from Perry County, Hazard, didn't get charged with the cover-up that he did for his crimes. Nobody's being charged for the cover-up. Where are these other police officers in the Sandra Birchmore case? Where's the charges for that cover-up? Even though they're coming in and they're saying they're investigating, so you've got the FBI investigating ARC, the rehab, Medicaid fraud is the only thing that they said that they've been investigating them for. So you've got all these accusations and all of these corrupt acts, but where's the investigation into the corruption? Where's the charges for the corruption? I think the closest thing that we've come to something like that would be the Scott Blair indictment and conviction of honest services fraud. Let's see. I missed the story here, but made it to the corruption complaints. All good. Not just the criminals getting cheated from these authorities. 99% of federal IRS cases are fraudulent. The Fed is not honest. There ain't an honest bone in any of them's department or body. Cops hate to be questioned. And in my case, they hate even more to be questioned by a woman. Yes, ma'am, Miss Janet. Every time I've ever gotten myself in trouble, that's what it's been about. I talk back because so many times you'll be talking to one about something and they'll tell you something. And this could be a prosecutor, defense attorney, police officer, you name it, any form, any position, dog warden, they all got the forked tongue at times. Anytime that they have like tried to tell me that this is how it works, or they'll tell me this something, and I'll know just out of whether it was me going to school or a prior experience that I had to learn something the hard way, but I will know that's not true. That's not right. And so I'll say it and tell them, I don't think that's right. And what you just told me is not true. That gets me in trouble. Because then you've called them a liar. And that makes it even worse. Most LE's credos are qualified immunity and plausible deniability. Yeah. This is exactly right. Nobody will stand with you if they might suffer a loss in the process. And, like I asked the fire chief to go and test and go to court for me. Oh, no. Well, my wife wouldn't like that. I was like, your wife wouldn't like it? What are you talking about? It's doing the right thing. Oh, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. My wife would get mad. Oh, okay. Thank you, Miss Jana. Thank you, honey. Thank you. Absolutely. If you guys want to go join the Justice for Crystal McCrory Jones Facebook page, I'm sure she would love to have you. It's on Facebook, Justice for Crystal McCrory Jones. And they have other cases, other people's cases too, that we will showcase. Starboy Glows. Back in 82, my dad was red-rummed by 2 troopers in New Jersey. I'm sorry, honey. I was 5 and was a witness. My family fought, and it took forever because the state kept trying to cover it up. Cop only got 4 years. I'm sorry, honey. And that's what's sad, is that there's no justice for the victims. And whenever you feel like you've been slighted by the police, like how many of you guys have been arrested for nothing? Like, how many of you have ever had handcuffs put on you? They've put you in the back of a police car and they've taken you to jail, and you were innocent, should not have been arrested, should not have been taken to jail, should not be spending the night in jail, should not have had to have hired you an attorney. How many of you have been through that? Because it's very traumatic. If you've never been arrested before, and then you were actually an innocent person, you didn't commit what you were being accused of or whatever, and you've been physically and emotionally, verbally intimidated and assaulted by a police officer, because it happens all the time. I've been verbally assaulted by many of them over the years. But it's a very traumatic experience if it's something that you've never been through before. I got ran out of jurors when I turned 18 by the police. Part of the reason why I like listening to stories. Yeah. Well, and I was trying to say this the other night, and I think I kept getting distracted. And I didn't finish what I was going to say. So, whenever you go through, like if you've never been arrested before, and then you go through a situation like this, and you get arrested and you have to fight and to try and clear your name, a lot of times you want to talk, right? You want to defend yourself. You want to scream it from the rooftops what happened. But that's where I was trying to talk about the right to remain silent. Well, that's what we should really do, is keep our mouth shut, because anything that we say then can and will be used against you in a court of law. Even if you didn't do anything wrong, even if you didn't do what that you're being accused of, still they are going to try and convict you. If they have charged you with something, well, then it's their job to make sure that they get a conviction on you. So anything that they can use against you, they will. And if you're really innocent, well, it doesn't even have to be, you don't even really have to be innocent. All you have to be is willing or have the desire to defend yourself. And you just kind of get put in a no-win situation. Damned if you do and damned if you don't. And you want to, tell people. You want to tell them. And you want them to be just as outraged as you are. And they ain't going to be, I can tell you. Most people are not going to be. Yay. All right. Miss Jana says the DA didn't care, state police didn't care, and the AG investigator stated, sorry, hun, there's not a damn thing I can do to help you. If the prosecutors, sheriffs, judges are making money working their system, they are never going to investigate their system. That's right. You just think, and that's what I say it too, Miss Christie. Follow the freaking money. Follow the money, because that's where it's always going to end. The pot of gold is always going to be at the money. You know, I don't understand why they have not focused more on these circles, these good old boy circles in our court systems, in these back hill country towns. Why are they, or what they're doing, not being looked at as racketeering? Why is that not being looked at in a RICO statute? Because you can look at ours down here in Whitesburg, Kentucky, and you can if you actually wanted to do some investigating and serve search warrants and look through all of the phone records and the technology that you would get, the technical stuff, the data, you can't tell me that there wouldn't be RICO charges there. They're making money through the cases that they're prosecuting. Well, if you've got a sheriff's department, and I'm just using this as not just here, anywhere. So if you've got a sheriff's department and a court who are in cahoots with rehabs and doctors and organizations, nonprofit organizations that are being investigated by FBI for Medicaid fraud, you know, if you've got a whole lot, you'd think that they would be doing, somebody would be investigating that. That was an independent investigation. Somebody that's not connected to all of it. Because you sure can't, the police can't police themselves. That never turns out very well. Epstein is a perfect example. He had lists. He had client lists. He had names galore, and it was all very, very important, rich people. And you never heard one name that was on any of those lists, except for Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton didn't get no trouble. Huge egos. Yep. Can't fit through the door with them big old heads. Most towns, etc., get away with it because they run old school. Now you can't get away with it because there's more access to digital evidence. Yeah. But what if they don't look at it? You know, like I'm questioning about the Mickey Stein's case. Well, now you know they've had search warrants for all their phones that were related. So you know they've served a search warrant. They had to have. There's no way they couldn't file a search warrant for Judge Kevin Mullins's phone records and all of his apps that were on his phone. You know they've had to serve a search warrant for Mickey Stein's, for all of his phone and communications and apps, emails, all of it. You would think that they would have done, that they would have, which they already had. They had Ben Fields' communications from the initial investigation, but I'd say he got him a new phone after that. But you'd think that they would serve one on everybody that worked at that sheriff's department. Anybody, I mean, I don't know if I don't know what the criteria is or would be for them to look at everybody's phone records involved. But you would think that all of that will come out at the trial, because they have to turn all that over to Mickey's lawyers. So Mickey's lawyers will have access to any kind of material that's produced from search warrants for phone records. But I don't know. We'll have to see. Well, racketeering, you know, I don't like all this stuff that's been going on with old P. Diddy. Everything that he's done over the last 30 years, I do not, or however long it's been going on, I don't see how they can't charge all of the teams of lawyers that he has had on his payroll over the years that have helped push out all of his non-disclosure agreements that he's had all these victims sign, coerced, forced, whatever, intimidated, whatever. All the lawyers that allowed for all of the theft. Well, it's no different here. It's no different here. If you've got lawyers who have participated in those kinds of acts, those don't hold up in a court of law. If you've had somebody sign a non-disclosure agreement trying to protect your own crimes, that doesn't hold water. Those non-disclosure agreements do not stand up. And as a lawyer, they know that. So I don't see how or why they are not charging these lawyers in all of these cases. I don't think it would be very hard to prove that they knew what they were doing. Unbiased investigation. They just got a big policewoman that was just ready to quit, but they investigated her and she quit. It just blows me away. Good police officers. We need police officers. You know, we need good, honest people to fill these positions. Now, I'm a little bit pessimistic. I don't think we have as many good people filling these positions. But we do need policemen. We need I don't know. I'm not very optimistic about it, y'all. See, if you can get them to do their jobs, just saying, sometimes there's evidence there. They just won't look at it. That's right. Good luck with finding someone not connected, because these situations are usually layered. It's a good point. It's a real good point. Yep, look there. Don't forget their bank accounts and all financial records cross-referenced with known associates in Cash Apps, Venmo, Chime, etc. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You want to know if somebody was stealing from the sheriff's department? Look at every bit of that right there. If you want to know if somebody's being corrupt, look at those things right there. It's going to tell you. And it's not going to be, it's not going to be hard to find. Yes, we know truth and transparency. Yep. She's did a great video following the money corruption since the 80s. It's crazy what they've been getting away with. Absolutely. Honey, they've been getting away with it for a very, very long time. They need to check those NCIC operators and the ones giving the criminals access to the databases. Law-abiding policemen. Yes, please like it, love it, or leave it. Hit the like button if you do, if you're not subscribed. Subscribe to our channel. We are growing this little channel. Almost. I think we've just got a couple hundred and we'll be up to like 7,000 or something like that. We're almost to 10, guys. I can't believe it. The people are the true police, not the for-profit government employees. And how many of our prison systems have become private now? You know, like the government doesn't even control the prison systems as much as what they used to. Now they're privately owned, privately ran. Every bit of that, allegedly, Lisa, sounds criminal to me. And when we find out, when they bring out who all the his buddies were, you got to remember, he didn't do all that on his own. He had drivers. He had people, babysitters. He had house cleaners. He had, you name it. Think of all the people who surrounded him and all of his buddies and his kids. Heck, allegedly, even his kids were doing things that he was doing. You know, the lawyers, every bit protected them, surrounded them, kept them to where they were insulated was the word I was looking for. And all of them are complicit. Everybody who knew what he was doing for the last 30 years or however many years is complicit in my eyes. We do need police more than ever since last several years, but how do they hire good policemen and them knowing the good from bad? Mayor likes the bad ones to get away with things. Yep, I know, honey. I know it's sad. Police officers should get better training and money. Yep. Yep. Jana says, in my sister's case, they returned the weapon back to her husband, but now claim her case remains open. I'm sorry, Jana. I'm so sorry. Once they've done so much damage to a case, I know it can feel very discouraging. I'm sorry. Anytime you want to come on, Jana, you just holler at me and I can send you a link, and you are more than welcome to come on to our show and tell us about your lovely sister and anything that you want to share with us. I think Zelmy has taken off. I don't think she's coming back, y'all. We've been on here about 2 hours, so I'm going to go ahead and close this one out. We've got all kinds of topics and all kinds of stuff to do shows on, y'all, so we'll be back tomorrow night at 7. Anything Miss Jana says, people talking about it makes me feel so much better. Still riding in the car, but we'll be home soon. Well, our prayers are with you, Miss Jana, and your family. And like I said, you're always welcome on our channel. We'll schedule something sometime and have you on. And Janine says, as long as lawyers, police, and all roles involved in justice system aren't held accountable for their corruption, it'll increase. What business did Diddy and Farwell have one-on-one with minors? Just look away. Yeah, everybody looked away. Everybody looked away or joined in. With both of those examples, Diddy, all of his buddies joined in, and with Farwell, his brother joined in, Andy's boss. I mean, what kind of hope do we have when instead of a police officer turning his fellow bad cop in, he just joins him? I mean, that's just unbelievable. Unbelievable to me. Like, do you not have a conscience? And the ego and the arrogance to think that you would get away with something like what they've done with this one child. We're talking about one child turned young adult. How many more? How many others? I want to do a deeper dive too on these Explorer programs versus the Boy Scouts. And anything that you guys have that you want to send me, any cases or anything, send it to my email anytime, hillbillycrime@gmail.com. And I'm a one-man show, so I'm a little bit slow. So don't get mad at me. But we'll get it together. All right, you guys. Well, you have a great rest of your evening. Stay blessed. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of our channel. And we'll see you tomorrow, okay? God bless you. Have a good night. Bye.